I'll start. Awesome. So hi, Courtney.
Hi, Annie.
So it's our second Conscious Corner podcast. Super excited to talk about something really important today. I think what we'll do is, I think what most important that we just discussed when we were off the air was to talk about what coaching is versus and mindfulness is, because what we're finding is that people are a little bit confused when they hear those words, or they think they have a misconception about what it is and what it means to utilize those services, should we say.
Yeah.
So let's start with mindfulness. Like, can you give me a definition of what mindfulness really means, and then we'll get into misconceptions down the road.
Yeah. And that's a great starting point, because I think that people form misconceptions about mindfulness because they don't really understand what it is. So there are a lot of different ways to define what mindfulness is, but in the context of the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is what I teach at the Center for Mindfulness at Jefferson, it was defined by John Kabat-Zinn, who created the MBSR program, as paying attention in the present moment on purpose with an attitude that is non-judging. So there's a lot there.
I love that. He definitely worked on that for a while, because that just makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of elements to it, but we have the attention, right? The attention piece, and it's intentional. So we're intentionally paying attention. It's in the present. And the piece that's really interesting, and this is where I think maybe some of the misconception stems from mindfulness, is this non-judgmental piece. So what we typically do in the MBSR program for the participants, and what I think is really helpful for the listeners to understand, is that judgment is sort of that pesky little voice in our heads. It's the critical voice that boxes things as right or wrong or good or bad. Whereas with mindfulness, it's not that we're not seeing what serves us or doesn't serve us, and we're not letting go of the ability to see what's helpful or not helpful. To the contrary, we're actually better able to discern. So we use discernment to see what supports us, to see what is most skillful. And I think that people, when they hear that mindfulness, we're letting go of judgment, we're not letting go of that ability to make wise choices.
That's a great point, because it's like, I just thought of a great example, but it kind of slipped my mind because what you were saying was so interesting.
Because of how long the definition is?
No, not at all. It's like you're not losing your opinion about something. It's
Right.
not being in this like other world or this cloud and just not feeling anything about something. And you're exactly right. When people hear non-judgment, they think, oh, I could never do that. Of course I judge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we're not getting rid, like, it's just part of human condition. Like, we're conditioned to judge ourselves, we judge others. Sometimes I ask, when I'm giving a workshop, I put it out there, like, what percentage of our lives do you think that we're judging ourselves, or maybe on the flip side, we're judging others? And it's usually like closer to 100%. So that's just human nature. And with mindfulness, we can start to notice just how judgmental we are of ourselves or maybe others. And that awareness piece is what allows us to cultivate a bit more kindness. So again, mindfulness enhances judgment and decision making because of the awareness piece. We can notice when we're reactive. We can notice when we're giving ourselves a hard time, or we're judging someone else. And with that ability to see that, that's what allows us to choose how to most skillfully respond.
So it actually heightens your awareness, if you will.
Yes, heightens your awareness, heightens your ability to see clearly and to step out of reactivity and choose how to most wisely respond.
Okay, so let's say, wow, Courtney, that sounds great. I really want to get involved with this. But like, I have all these thoughts, right? And so let's say you're just naming the top three, or telling me, detailing for me the
Mhm.
top three things that people that you've seen
Yeah.
think about mindfulness as a practice or as a word, whatever. What are those three, and how do we debunk them?
Okay. So you're saying the word, just by you saying the word think or thoughts, that's a huge one. So we have lots of thoughts. And I think, or what I hear come up, it's like the top 10 tunes, what comes up for people. One of the top three misconceptions is that there's no way, just given how busy my mind is, that I can clear my mind of my thoughts. Right? So again, the great thing about mindfulness, there's so many great things, but in terms of this misconception and debunking it, we're not trying to get rid of our thoughts. In fact, we're not trying to get rid of anything. With mindfulness, we're learning that we can be with it all. And we want to see just how often we get caught up in our thoughts. So we're not trying to wipe the slate clean, or to get all the thoughts out of our head, right? We don't have to push them away. But the more and more we notice just how lost we get in worrying about the future, or getting caught up on the past, or maybe judging the present moment, with that awareness, then we don't have to get so pushed or pulled by our thoughts.
You of course, that's number one. Like, I'll talk to people about meditation or mindfulness, and again, like we'll get into my coaching and everything, but I'll preach it because I believe in it, but I don't know
Yeah.
how to teach it like you do. But the
Yeah.
number one thing that people come back and say to me is, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't relax my brain. I can't. I have monkey mind. I can't possibly." But
Mm-hmm.
you just said it. Like, that's not the purpose. It's not to not have thoughts.
It's not to have thoughts. We want to get more intimate with our thoughts and ourselves. We
Mhm.
want to be able to see some of our patterns and how we actually get in our way with our thoughts, because our thoughts they're so powerful. They can really take over what we're thinking and how we're feeling. But if we're not able to be aware of that, to be curious of the thinking process, then we just get lost in it. I say we hop on that thought train, and
Yeah.
we believe the stories we tell ourselves. And
Well, we get sucked into that thought and feeling, right? Like, oh,
yeah,
now this is going to happen. Oh my gosh. And then you spiral down that hole.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for example, a lot of times people who take my workshops, they're coming to me because they want to better manage a chronic health condition. And even with that, when we have a certain medical condition, it's really helpful to see our relationship to it, because the things we tell ourselves, the thoughts that we have about it, even though we're already maybe hurting because we have chronic back pain, or we have something going on with our knee or our neck, the things that we tell ourselves 9 times out of 10 aren't rosy. And we can often just project into the future, or maybe even a doctor's appointment. Like, we don't even know what our condition is yet. We know
Mhm.
what we're feeling, but the mind has a tendency to run off into some catastrophe, and it causes us more suffering. So, with a regular practice of mindfulness, we can start to understand some of our habitual patterns, some of our inner narrative that really doesn't serve us. So, we come back to this attitude that we cultivate with mindfulness, which is non-judging, the ability to notice when maybe we're giving ourselves a hard time. And
Yeah.
then not to judge that, because we also do a good job at judging ourselves for being
We
judgmental.
do a great
So
job at that. Yeah. So a hypochondriac, someone, we throw that word around, but like that person's like even more judgmental of everything. That person's not noticing at all. And they're just, because I happen to know a few close to me that are truly like, just if something is said, just catastrophizing, and going into these rabbit holes and doing
yeah,
internet searches. And it's like, if you could just step back and just, we're
yes,
not there yet. Let's just review what we've been told, what we think, and let's
Yeah.
be aware of exactly what you're saying. I just didn't really know to call it that.
No, I love that stepping aside. Like it literally is like when we notice the mind spinning. So you use the example of a hypochondriac. When the mind is just spinning or we're ruminating over something, with awareness, we don't have to get caught up in the thoughts. We can step aside, we can observe the thinking process and not have to examine like the content of it, but just see it for what it is.
And this is when I freak out. This is when my mind starts to run away. And this is when I start to tell myself scenarios. Like I do
Yes.
that in coaching too, right? Like you know you're telling stories right now, right? Like that's a story. That's not a fact. Right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's our story. Like what's your story? What's the story you're telling your not you, but like
Yes, of course.
when
You
we're
in general.
using mindfulness, when we're practicing, we want to get up close to that because the more and more we can see that, the more we can open the gateway to freedom. We don't have to be so controlled by our thoughts. And it's huge. It's huge when you can just tap into even an area of your life where you're not aware of just how much extra suffering you're causing yourself. When you can see that and then step aside and just observe it, again, not having to judge yourself for
Yeah.
it, but see it for what it is and not have to believe it. Like that's
Right. Like it is what it is, but you don't have to believe that story.
yeah.
So okay, so let's debunk another myth. What's
Okay.
another mindfulness myth that we can debunk?
So another mindfulness myth is that I don't have the time to practice mindfulness. And I think this comes up a lot in the work that you do as well. But I think the approach to the formal practice of mindfulness is really important because if we're a really busy professional and on top of being a professional, we're juggling a family or we have obligations in our personal lives or what have you, if we approach mindfulness practice as yet another thing on our to-do list, then of course we're just going to say no, we're going to push it to the side because we just feel like we don't have the capacity to add one more thing to
One more thing. Yep.
But if we look at it as not another thing to do, but a really deep practice of self-care and one that allows us to be more present for all that it is that we do, then we can look at it as not a chore or a drag of something to get done, but something that's really going to serve us, something that's really going to support us, whether it's in our professional lives or in our personal worlds. It's more an act of deep self-care.
To your point, I've heard this before where it's like, I don't have to practice mindfulness. That's not on my to-do list. I get to.
Yeah.
Right. It's
And
just like I get to go on vacation. Not that it's the same as vacation, but like I get to go out for ice cream. I get to, it's like if you think about the gratitude in that you
yeah,
change it from I have to I get to
yeah.
do that. Right.
Yeah. No, I heard this just brought something up for me that Dan Harris, who he has a podcast and he wrote a book called 10% Happier, he was talking about exercising. And the same holds true. Like, if you make it like it's something you have to do because you have to lose weight or you have to be healthier or you have to reduce stress, like if you frame it in that way, you're probably not going to wake up earlier and get on the treadmill or go lift weights. But if you can look at it from a standpoint of being full of gratitude, like that we have the ability to practice, to strengthen our ability to be present and all that can open us up to, then I think it goes a longer way. And it doesn't have to be, sometimes people think I can't sit still and not think about things for 30 minutes or 20 minutes or even 15 minutes. And what I like to say is small glimpses many times. It's not about having these marathon long sessions where you have to sit in lotus pose and like be in silence. I mean, it's helpful if you're in silence, especially when you're beginning, but even just taking 5 minutes from your day, whether it's you get up a little bit earlier or you carve out time from your lunch schedule or before you go to bed. You sit on the edge of your bed and you just feel into the body. You feel the body breathing. It's almost like a bucket of water. If you imagine a leak in the ceiling, and each time a drop of water falls into the bucket, over time, that bucket's going to become really full of water. The same holds true with our practice. It's not about having to practice for 20 or 30 minutes, but it's the regularity. So even if we're taking a few minutes each day, it really does add up. But people, I think, when they imagine or envision themselves taking time from what feels like a really overwhelming already schedule, they just push it.
Yeah, how am I going to do that for 30, 40 minutes? Yeah, it's the same as going to the gym. It's the same as, how can I possibly chunk that, right? Like they don't understand that it's just like exactly what you said, the drops in a bucket. It's just the consistency is so much more important than the actual time, right? You can't go to the gym and squat 800 pounds. I mean, maybe Jalen Hurts can, but like you 600, I think, but like you have to work your way up, right? Like you have to, it's baby steps. So to your point, like, debunking the myth of not having time, it's like, you could make 5 minutes, right? Like you have 5 minutes for sure. You're scrolling Instagram for 5 minutes, 100%.
Yes. And I think that the more and more your practice builds and the more you get a taste of the fruits of the practice, that's what's going to encourage you. That's going to give you the momentum to keep at it, because you're going to start to see the ways that it's benefiting you. They may be small at first, they may grow with a regular practice, but it's just getting in there. It's just making that time to sit and just allow yourself to step out of our constant doing and just be.
I love that. I love just being, even though I do have a little bit of a hard time just being, but that's why, part of the reason that we were drawn to each other. Cause I need that in my life. I was trying to work these computers earlier. I got this new setup and like 13 screens. It seems like it's like 3, and I was so annoyed. And I'm like, thank God I'm talking to Courtney at like 12:30 or whatever it was, because you give me this like, kind of calm vibe. And I just am like, you know what? Like, it's just computers, will figure it out. But when I'm in it by myself,
I'm right there with you. And that's why it's a practice. They call it mindfulness practice, because while all of these qualities, like the ability to be patient, whether it's with our computers or with our, the people in our lives, with our children, right? It's all innate. It's all here. These feel good qualities, these qualities that we like to lean into, they're all here. But it takes practice, because a lot of what we're conditioned to feel and think and believe, it's not always pleasant, right? I say we water the seeds of stress and anxiety, just the news we're pumped with each day. So the more and more we practice, and again, it doesn't have to be so much time, but with a regular practice, we can start to really help these innate feel-good qualities to flourish.
I'm calling it your mindfulness muscle. That's my new thing going forward.
Yes.
It's a muscle, right? We have to just like strengthen this muscle. It's the same with reading, like you're not going to be able to read a 600-page book and stay in, like you have a reading muscle. Your brain will, now I can read, but I didn't start like that. Right.
Yep.
So yeah, it's your mindfulness muscle. I'm just naming, I think that's what it is.
That's totally spot on. I say it's the muscle of the mind, where it's the same as, like you mentioned, I use the gym analogy all the time. If we want to get our leg muscles stronger or our bicep muscles stronger, we can't just go in and do one set and then we walk out and
like why didn't I feel anything good from that? Like I don't want to do that. Yeah, and I was there for an hour. Like that was a pain. I don't always have an hour. It's like, just as I say to my clients, like just take it down a notch. Let's just baby steps, right?
Yeah.
So okay, so let's move on to debunking another mindfulness myth. Let's look at number 3. What's your third one? What'd you say?
I would say number 3, there's so many of them, but number 3 is that this stuff is like hippy dippy, woo woo, like that there's no scientific backing for it. And that couldn't be any more untrue, because actually now more than ever, there is so much scientific research that really backs the benefits of mindfulness, from stress reduction, reduction of anxiety and depression, helping with chronic pain, sleep disorders, increasing clarity and focus, and improving communication. There's scientific research that can actually measure the benefits of mindfulness in ways that couldn't be done before. There's a neuropsychologist by the name of Rick Hansen, or actually Richie Davidson, a psychologist. He did a study with John Kabat-Zinn, who created the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And they did a study where a mindfulness weekly, like several week program was offered within a workplace. And they measured the brain electrical activity at the start of the program. And then they measured it at the end of the several week program, and then several weeks after that. And these people weren't like, expert meditators. They were relatively new to mindfulness meditation. But what they were able to find, and I should add, after the program, at the end of the program, the people involved in this study were also given the influenza vaccination. And then, of course, there was a control group, so people who weren't participating in the mindfulness program. And what they found is that we can actually use our minds with mindfulness meditation to change our brains. And the ability to use mindfulness to create new neural pathways is what allows us to, we're literally like reshaping our brain. And it improves not only brain function, but what they found in the people who took the program and got the influenza vaccination, they found that it improved immune function compared to the control group.
Wow, it's like their system opened up for something to help them versus closed and tight. And yeah, that makes total sense.
It was several weeks. It wasn't like these people were in this program for years and years.
6 months or a year, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a really exciting area in mindfulness, because they're looking at the intersection between mindfulness and neuroscience, and they're finding that they can measure in brain activity and in immune function. They can really measure the ways in which the practice benefits us. So this is an area I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
It's a relatively newer area that's being explored, but one that I think has a lot of promise.
It certainly does. I mean, if all those naysayers want to say, well, it's just your feeling and just your thought, they will have real numbers. Some people are just numbers people. I'm like, great, it'll be great. But there's other people that, want to see hard data. And this is what you're talking about, hard data. So
yeah. And people, I think people are extremely skeptical about it, but when they can see brains shown on a screen,
Yeah.
they see the activity and how we can actually grow areas of our brain that promote positivity, like to see that happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can't.
I don't need it. I just believe you because it's you, but I think other people might. So, all right. So if somebody wants to, let's say, get a hold of you because they want to learn more, about your program, they want to, they have a myth that we didn't mention today. What do they do?
So I can be reached on LinkedIn. I am always happy to connect with new people on LinkedIn, so you can look me up there. I also have a website called Courtney Sholnick Mindfulness, where you can connect with me as well. And you can also learn more about mindfulness and get free guided practices, both audio and video.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. So now my turn to ask you about some of the big misconceptions about coaching. So I'm curious, I know we've spoken about this loosely, but I'm curious about what the number one you think is the biggest misconception with coaching?
Well, so let's start at the beginning, which is like, what is coaching, right? Like what is, and we started with mindfulness. Like people have misconceptions like, oh, are you trying to be a therapist? What's coaching? What's executive coaching? And that's just, I don't want to sit in executive coaching and do this professional development test. Like I don't really want to do the Myers-Briggs. I've done that a million times. Like, how's that
Yeah.
going to help me, right?
Yeah.
My coaching is a little bit different, but what I will tell you is therapy is different because there's a lot. Well, first of all, I'm not a doctor, right? And I'm not a licensed social worker. So I have my coaching certificate and my MBA and I have my own business, but I'm not, and I'm not belittling coaches, but it's not the same degrees, right? So
Right.
I'm not diagnosing any diseases or disorders or anything like that. But what I can do is I have a special kind of coaching where it's executive coaching, but it's where personal and professional development meet. So it's really more about the person and the individual. Yes, how they can be better leaders in my corporate clients, but also how to be more authentic and mindful people in general. So with their spouse, with their partner, with their kids in their life, in their daily life. So that's what I think coaching, I know coaching to be versus, other things out there.
No,
So
this
the
is
first,
helpful. I have to, before you talk about
yeah,
the
go ahead.
basics, I have to admit, I hear, I would say it's a bit of a buzzword. I hear coaching all the time,
Yeah.
and I know that there are a lot of coaches out there. I had a tennis coach, I know what that is, but like as it pertains to life or executives, like I couldn't really. Now I have a sense of what you do, but for
So to your
listeners,
point, there's career coaching, right?
yeah.
That's somebody that specifically focuses on your career. Have I helped people with their career? Of course, right? I'm an executive life coach. So
Yeah.
it's all areas of your life. So more of like a general practitioner, I would say.
Mhm.
There's executive presence coaching. There's every kind of confidence coaching, and it is a buzzword, and it is a little annoying because it's like every left and right you see another coach, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the thing about coaching is meeting. I've never said coaching so much in my life. I feel like I wish I had like a quarter for every time we said. So it's meeting people, having. That's why I always have a consult. That's not. It's free. It's talk for a while, half hour, 45 minutes, and see if you vibe with that person, because you can have any title you want. If
Yeah.
you don't vibe with somebody, if you and I are constantly talking over each other and we're not answering each other's questions clearly, we shouldn't have a podcast, right?
Yeah.
If I meet with someone for a half hour and they are not on the same page as I am, and I am not on the same page as they're, I'm not the right coach for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all about, it's vibing, and not looking at it as a buzzword, but really understanding what the benefits are.
Yeah.
So that leads me to your question, which is the first, and the first myth to debunk, which is kind of a mouthful to say. But what I will say is
You should say that the coaching with Conscious Corner 3 times, and then what you just said
you know
another three
what
times.
my sons and I were trying to say free reward the other day from there were free rewards. You sit there, pause this podcast, or don't. If you're laughing, just say free reward like 4 times in a row. You like fast, you can't. Free reward. So anyway, coaching and conscious corner, whatever. All right, so we're not going to do that test because I'm going to fail miserably. But
let's let's go back to the number one.
all right, number one myth to
misconception.
debunk. Not a
As I
free
cry.
reward is they're going to sound eerily familiar because they're very similar to debunking your myths
Yeah.
about mindfulness, right? But I just don't have time. I can't carve out time to do this. It's and I would say, like, my commitment that I initially asked for is a little bit more than yours. Yours is like it's more sustainable than my commitment. It's like you
Yeah.
got to just practice both. It's a muscle. It's a practice. So the best coaching I do is between 4 and 6 months, once a week, for 50 minutes. That's my time schedule so that's the sweet spot. 4,
Yeah.
5, 6 months. Sounds like a lot. It's a lot to bite off when you're a busy mom, dad, professional, everything, you do pickleball, you do things for fun, you go to dinner with your partner on the weekend. There's no time for
Yeah.
coaching. And,
Yeah.
I have a full-time job, I'm a
Yeah.
busy executive, or I run a household.
Mhm.
Okay. Like I got to pick up my kids at 3. When am I going to do this?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like you said before, just wait a minute. When I say invest in me, it means take your time to understand what coaching can do for you and that it's a blip. It's
Yeah.
a blip on the radar screen of your life. So if you can truly, if I can, I can't, I mean, I don't want to say the word promise, but I've yet to fail with a client, okay, and
Mhm.
of several years of doing this,
Yeah.
that if you agree with me to do what I ask you to do and work on this muscle
Mhm.
that I ask you to work on and practice these things that I'm asking you to practice for 1 hour a week.
Mhm.
And I'm talking like very little homework, maybe 15 minutes a week.
Yeah.
For let's say 4 to 5 months,
Right.
tops 6. That's 24 sessions with me. So 24 hours with me. That's all I get.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you do that to find your best self so that you can be better when you're playing the sports you're playing and going to dinner and entertaining and
Yeah.
playing your whatever, whatever it is you do, what's your thing? You're a CEO, right? That's most of my clients are C-suite executives, right?
Mhm.
How do you want to, if you want to be the best version of you, give me 24 hours. That's how I'm going to put it. That if that's not a blip on your radar screen, then I don't know, like what's going on, because it's an hour a week for 6
Yeah.
months.
And you're by investing in yourself, the benefits ripple out into all areas of your life. And I think it's similar in what I do, that if you're not present in this moment, then you miss out on this moment and the next, if you can't strengthen that muscle, then you just miss all the moments of your life. So with working with you and strengthening that muscle, then in turn, all the beauty they open themselves up to. Or it sounds like you can get out of your own way. The same way you notice when you're lost in thought, like you can start to see the different ways that you can support yourself more fully through your work.
To validate this myth, I will say it seems like when you hear a program that's 6 months long, it's like half a year, like it feels like a lot to bite off, right? But if you think about it as a blip in your life and what,
Mm-hmm.
like you just said, what it can do for you,
Yeah.
totally a myth that it's a lot. That it's really not. It's actually one of the most important investments you might ever make in your life to be better for everyone around you and to be better for yourself and to find out what authenticity really means instead of this buzzword that people are saying, authentic, authentic. What does that mean?
Yeah. And I also think if people take a moment to step back and break down their day and see just how much time we waste, like you said, whether it's social
Scrolling.
media or just getting caught up in stuff, when you add that up, I think it's fair to say that you can probably find yourself that hour.
Can find 50 minutes. I'm even making a lot. It's 50 minutes.
50 minutes, even better. So,
Right.
so that,
So it's a lunch, right? And like what I'll find is, people, and I think I said this recently, but people will actually feel like it's a breath of fresh air when they come talk to me for 50 minutes. It's not like something that you dread. It's not, I have, references that can speak to that. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go. I thought this was, whatever. That'll say like, it was like my break once a week.
no, I can totally attest to that, and the amount of smiles that I have on my face during the time with you, not to mention the tears from my eyes. So I
We do
said
laugh
this,
a lot.
I said this, I think on the first episode, that your presence, and again, we're not together in person, but you can just feel that energy, and that alone, just being together without even knowing, the specifics of the 6-month program or the smaller, shorter programs, but just to sense that alone, I mean, that is life changing for me. So,
Aw, thanks, Court.
you're welcome. Thank you for explaining, because I know I wanted to understand have a better understanding of what coaching is, and
Yeah.
I think that we're sort of aligned with the misconception of the time, like not having time. What's the what's the second?
Okay. So the second one that comes to my mind, because you know how like you'll make a document and say like what you're gonna say as your three, because you want to know, like I'm so from off the cuff, right? I'm like, what did I say my three were? Because this is really from my soul, right? Not that yours isn't, but like I really am thinking like what just came to me as far as, and it's definitely like what how's that? It's like how's that gonna help me? What are you gonna tell me that I don't already know?
Mm-hmm.
Is a huge one.
Yeah.
What are you really going to do that I haven't done? What are you going to teach me? And like, honestly, Courtney, I've said this because I do happen to coach some really brilliant people. It's
Yeah.
just what's come across my desk, right? Just, I mean, from the great schools to the degrees, I'm talking about real brilliance in their mind and in their souls, right? True.
Yeah.
And I don't use that word lightly, brilliance. Like they're smart people, right? They've read the books, they've done the things. Maybe they've even done another program before, some sort of something. And they're like, really? Like, Annie, what are you gonna? And I say immediately, I am not gonna teach you anything or tell you something that's gonna, this is not rocket science. I'm not gonna, like, your mind isn't gonna be blown. Well, sometimes, but they're not gonna say, oh my God, you just told me something that I've never heard before. But what I can do is I can show number one, I can show you something from a totally different angle. Because that's
Mm.
one of the things, to toot my own horn, that's one of the things I'm pretty good at, is like to be
Yeah.
like, let's just turn the lens and let's look at it from this side.
Like
And
the different
yes,
perspective, right? Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just devil's advocate, but it's like, let me just help you understand. Like, and again, like we were talking about before, the stories that you tell, right? We all tell
Yeah.
stories. So
Yeah.
being able to kind of turn that perspective. But I say, I will guide you into a way of life
Mm-hmm.
that's not rocket science. It's not something that that's the difference between me and one of the differences between me and a therapist too, is I didn't learn this in a book.
Right.
I learned this from life experience, and I have lived a couple lives. I'm like a cat, right? So it's like, I will guide you to not make the mistakes I've made, to not make the same decisions or decisions that I've made, to not be so reactive like I have. There's a lot of personal stuff and getting vulnerable in coaching that I don't know that exists in other things, especially in my program. So I will say that number two is, what am I going to learn that you don't already know? Just come see. Like, just come see. Just have one session with me. I know. I would say I've yet to. We'll get to three, and then we'll talk about what I was just going to say. So three is I don't have the money.
Before you get to
Wait,
three,
all right. So
I want to
okay,
go
go ahead.
back
Go ahead. I'm
because
sorry. I didn't give you any chance to
because
ask a question.
we have to give credit where credit's due. So I heard you say, talking to your clients, like, don't do the things that I did or where I went wrong or being reactive, but we have to look at the flip side, all the great decisions you've made, all
Well,
the
from doing
good.
the work, right? I mean, from doing the
Yeah,
work.
so
Like,
we have to
you're
put
right.
that in
You're
there
right. You're right. Good
because
call.
perception, right? We want to see
No,
what we tell ourselves and what we're projecting.
totally. You're exactly right. And putting that out is important, that it's guiding. There's why I have a framework, right? It's a loose framework that I do called breath framework. And there's a system that I follow loosely, and we always can come back to the acronym breath. But truly, it's so customized. And you're right. Like, what I've turned around and how I've turned my life around in the last 10 years through this work is seriously miraculous.
Yeah.
So it is. It's truly like a miracle. So you're exactly right. So before getting into the third one, I do want to acknowledge that you're totally right. And just maybe guiding people. Guiding is almost better than coaching to me, but I don't like the word guide because it does have a little bit of that woo-woo. So guiding people in the direction of being the best version of themselves, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's gonna make mistakes. I'm also talk about judgment. Truly one of the least judgmental people you'll ever meet. Like, I'll say funny stuff of what I think, but I truly do not judge you. Like, you've probably made very similar mistakes that I have. I don't judge in that regard.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
That's a
so
gift. That's a gift for yourself and a gift to all those
I
who.
didn't say I don't judge myself. I definitely judge myself, so I need the mindfulness for that. But I will tell you, there's very, very little that somebody tells me in coaching. This is over years of coaching people that I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
like there's always a way that I can always kind of say, even some really terrible stuff, some really amazing stuff, I can always kind of say, okay, and I can watch it mindfully. I can look at it. So yeah. So okay. So number 3 is I don't have the money. Okay.
So financial concerns.
Financial burden of it. Now, granted, there are some people, I would say 2 out of 10 that I consult with that truly like they can't make this work. Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Maybe you need to save, maybe you need to budget better, maybe it's just not in the cards for you. I understand that. Now, I typically use the sliding scale. I'll say that. So if someone's having a financial hardship, I'm not going to turn them away if they really need me, right? But coaching can be pricey. I'm sort of middle of the road price wise, and we can go over that if people want to, have a consult meet with me. But point is, again, like you said, self-care, investment. Like it's not a gym membership that you're never going to go to. I will hold you accountable, and you will feel and see the difference. Like you said, consistency.
Yeah.
Once a week. Now there has to be flexibility on my side too. Like you're a high level executive. You can't always do Tuesday, like I said last time, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Right? It's not always going to work.
Flexible in terms of if someone's good one week on a Tuesday a.m., but then the following week they have a meeting, you can move it to a Wednesday.
It's part of our life, right? I work with executives and busy moms and dads, and I can't be like, well, you missed your appointment. Like I have to flow like water with some people, but I won't miss weeks at a time. I mean, if somebody's missing a couple weeks, I've never had happen, but I would revisit and say, let's talk for 5 minutes and see why this is happening. Cause it's probably another reason other than not wanting to talk to me.
Right.
So like, what's your commitment look like? So when you break it down and you look at the money and you look at your financials, your financials, what does this investment really mean for you after the 6 months or the 3-month program? What's the impact? So the financial little bit of a hit that you're going to take that you can't, you're not sure if you can wrap your head around, right?
Yeah.
Or, that's this much a month or this much a week. I want you to come talk to me and learn about why this is such a tremendous investment. We all, for the most part, typically we have a car that we invest in. Typically we have education that we invest in. Typically we have some sort of self-care, if it's massage or whatever it is, right?
Right.
This is that kind of investment. This is the kind that you're going to see. You're going to have, not just going to get you from A to B. Like a car is really important. I'm not going to tell people what to spend on a car, right? What it matters to you might not matter to me, but your point of having a vehicle is to get to places you need to go, right? So what's your point of coaching? It's to get where you need to go.
I love that. I'm getting all these images with the things that you're saying that they're like little cartoons, but that they really land for me and they speak volumes in what you do. And if your program is similar in the sense that like, yes, you meet from A time to B time, like in terms of your whole program, it doesn't just stop there. Like the benefits and the teachings, if you stay at it, they're just going to keep growing and growing. So I think that rather than looking at it as an investment for just the period of time of your program or their meeting with you, it's like a life investment. Like these skills and these qualities, they're just going to continue to grow and get stronger.
Absolutely. It's a muscle, like we said this whole show. And I'm going to teach you just like you do. I'm going to teach you things and guide you that you'll use in your life. Practical things, not rocket science, right? It's just like people will be like, I never looked at it from that angle, or that makes sense, or I'm going to practice that. Like my assignments are like, find 3 I can't even give you an example because it's all customized, but like, notice 3 things next week that you do until we see each other again, where you feel this. No, that's not like something that takes a whole lot of time. Right. So point being, it's a blip, and in your financials, actually also a blip.
Yeah.
And again, I understand that some people can invest in certain things, but the majority of people can figure this out, and it will make sense for the rest of your life, for your relationships, professionally and personally. So that's the third myth I will have to try to debunk here. That you can make it work financially.
Great, great. Well, it's been helpful for me to hear these and to have a better understanding of what exactly your coaching is. I know it's not the same as every other coaching, which is what makes your program and you so unique. So thank you for explaining that for us. And
Sure.
I just got these images, we're talking about strengthening all these great qualities, and I'm gonna probably show my age here, but we're loosely.
Then you'll be showing my age as well, my friend.
But the gremlins, right? They get wet, or they see light, or they
Light.
eat past a certain, and they multiply. And I just picture all these like Arnold Schwarzeneggers coming out from our work, that we have all these different strong muscles that we're just projecting out, but
Yeah,
it's not
little
really
mini
that, but
Arnolds, little mini Arnolds.
internal Arnold. But
No,
no,
I
it's
feel you. I feel like, God, I hope there's not people listening I hope everybody listens, but I hope there's not people that are like, what are gremlins? I'd be so sad, because everybody needs to know Gizmo. Everybody needs to know what gremlins are. That's important. If you take nothing else from this podcast, go rent that movie. If you haven't seen that, I'd be really upset. Although rewatching it kind of doesn't land the way it did when I was little. But that aside, good point. And you have such an amazing brain that's what you think of. Like
that's where I
you have
went.
little cartoons in your mind. Like, you have such a creative brain, and I envy that. So yeah, so you can to find me and just reach out
Yeah,
to
that's
me,
what I was.
and leave.
That was my. I was
Oh,
so
I'm
caught up
sorry.
on Gizmo, but I was going to ask. So, if somebody wants to work with you, or maybe wants to talk to you about how they can adapt your program to what's going to suit their needs,
Yeah.
and just learn more about what you have to offer, where are some of the places they can go to connect with you?
Well, number one, I would say I need to work on not asking your questions. But number two, they can reach me at Annie@annieleib.com is my email. I'm like really reachable. And it's leiv.com, which
LEIB.
everybody misspells. Kind of psyched to change it to my married name, which is Calvert. But we'll get there. My business name is probably going to stay Annie Leib. And LinkedIn. I'm a huge LinkedIn person. It's where a lot of my business comes from, and a lot of great relationships start there. So you can just look me up on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
as always, Annie, it's been a pleasure,
Ditto.
and I'm excited for our next episode together. So
Me
thank you
too.
for this time.
Awesome. Thanks for your time and being you and explaining everything. And hey guys, we'll see you next time.
Take care.